in the weekend?
Oh yes, yes. That was some quite good fun, as I'm sure you've seen the videos.
Yeah.
One of them in particular of one of the troons being a little bit less than convivial has caught a lot of social media traction, and it's people are talking about it in the United Kingdom and United States and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's great when that happens. It helps to start the conversation and for people to see what's really going on.
Yeah. So what were you recording?
The event was at the Pioneer Women's Memorial Hall. That is a building that was proposed by some suffragettes in the late 1890s and shortly after the turn of the century to be a place for women's societies to be able to meet and conduct meetings and do those sorts of things. And this weekend, as part of Pride, that building was occupied by the Disinformation Project, Auckland Pride, and prominent trans activists such as Chanel Lal to talk about things to do with queer literary experiences. So I thought that was very interesting. Amongst the women's rights groups, they were pretty disconcerted that a space which nominally is devoted to women's issues in women's societies was being occupied and colonized by those sorts of people. So decided to go along and film it, film outside rather than film inside. At the end of the day, it's a ticketed event, and we weren't invited, and I'm sure they would not have enjoyed our presence. So we were just filming outside to sort of keep an eye on what was going on. And as it happened, we did catch some action.
Yeah.
It certainly was the case, as you've probably seen from the footage, that that the trans rights activists are not keen on having their behaviour exposed, and that very much includes public photography.
What sort of behaviors were going on outside there? I've watched the video, so I know exactly what's going on, but I'm keen to hear from you what you experienced.
Yeah, well, after here in New Zealand, after the events of Posey Parker and Albert Park last year, it has become the case that the rainbow community is very, very cognizant of the damage that video footage of their violence and demented behaviour, the damage that does to their cause.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you would think that any organisation that has an interest in public relations would perhaps say, okay, well, look, we're not winning any hearts and minds by assaulting women and behaving so terribly.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing that. Instead, what they try to do is to prevent the publication of photography demonstrating them doing that, which is what they tried to do on Saturday, where they're trained to interfere with photographers, to try and block camera shots, to mob photographers, and to distract them by saying awful things. And you will have seen from the videos that myself and the other cameraman released that their approach is certainly not something that you would want young people to have to listen to.
Their behavior on the video that I watched was quite vulgar, if I can use that word. It's quite disgusting behavior. Why do you think they behave that way? What's going on?
Well, I think it's quite reflective of the thinking within the broader rainbow community, but also specifically amongst the trans rights activists and the troons, that they become rather myopically focused on sexual issues, and that shines through in their language. And as you say, the content of what was said in those videos is astonishing. It would not be broadcastable, for instance.
Was it a he or a she?
Well, it's a biological man who I would assume is going through the process of quote unquote transitioning.
Right.
So I would
Maybe the hormones are a bit misplaced.
yes, I would say in that particular individual's case that there's probably a combination of hormone replacement therapy and recreational drugs and perhaps psychiatric medication.
Yeah, because he was quite aggressive. He was making some disgusting comments about, all sorts of things.
Yes, and a lot of because there's a lot of people within the gay community who are really concerned about how their lesbian, gay, and bisexual movement has been co-opted a lot by the trans and queer community, and to those people, particularly homosexual men that I've spoken to, they are absolutely aghast at the blatant homophobia that is expressed by this trans rights activist.
Which is what makes your video so pivotal, because I hear about these behaviors. I've actually never watched it, and then when I met with you in the weekend, and you encouraged me to watch it, and I had to sit and watch it. It's quite uncomfortable. It's like, how is Simon dealing with this right in front of his face for like 10 minutes? I don't even want to watch this. But then it does, confirm what I keep hearing about these behaviors that are disgusting, frankly, because you're filming in a public space, which you can do, and you can film at events. There's no reason for someone to do that or behave in that way, and then the media call it as peaceful protests.
Yes, there is that, and that's it. And I think that's a big part of the motivation to do it, is that our extremely left-wing captured media simply will not ever show or tell the truth of these things.
Yeah.
But coming back to your previous point about the patients, you'll have seen people saying, "Well, how did you maintain your composure while you're being verbally assaulted and harassed and abused like that?" And I think that it's better not to engage. I think that having a camera in hand and affording people the opportunity to show the world who they are and the things that they think and the way that they want to behave is a better approach. I don't see an awful lot of point, of getting into a conversation with a person like that, because it's inevitable that it would be an argument, and neither of us is likely to change the other person's mind. So it's better to just simply not engage and to just observe events and allow people to express themselves as they choose.
Yeah, that's the way to go about it. And, people's daily behaviors and activities define who they are. And you can clearly see in the video that you are the calm one there and having very civil, you're responding to them. Minimal, but you're sort of speaking in very respectful manner, and you're being informative, and you're sort of confirming your free speech and your right to be there. And then he is getting more and more aggressive. And then next thing you know, there is someone else that's wandering around in the scene, and she's on the phone with the cops.
Yes.
And the cops arrive while she's on the phone.
Yes.
I've never seen that sort of a fast response from the cops.
No, indeed.
How did that play out?
Yeah, well, that was fascinating in itself. And this is the rainbow special privilege that we have with two-tiered policing in New Zealand. And I should say that, I don't consider myself to be a critic of the New Zealand police. I think that in general they do a very good job. But it is the case that they have been ideologically captured, particularly in the higher echelons of their organisation, by some of this far left ideology, very much including rainbow issues. So as I've discussed previously, it's the case in New Zealand that if your home is burgled or if your business is ram raided, that the police may never turn up. But in contrast, the rainbow community have the police on speed dial. And as you say, even before that lady put down the phone, the police were there to just make sure that that myself and the other photographer had not committed any crime.
Yeah, it almost felt like they had already informed the police that this event was going ahead, and they might call them in case something happens. And so the police must have been alerted that there's something going on. And so when the call went through, it almost felt like they already knew about it.
Perhaps they did, and I would imagine that they're aware of a variety of events around.
I guess that's sort of their job. It's big day out and this and that, and they kind of have to know what's going on. And
yes, and particularly because we've had the pro-Israel and the pro-Palestine demonstrations that the police have had to manage over recent weeks and months. With another event like this coming up, there's the potential for large groups of people to be coming into contact with one another that may lead to conflict and confrontation. So I think the police are probably fairly well informed of those sorts of events and like to keep an eye on things.
What do you mean by a two-tier system? Why do you think the police favor the rainbow community more and respond to that instead of a burglary?
Well, I think it's ideological capture within the higher echelons of the police service, and it's certainly the case that over the last 6 years of a very, very left-wing Labour Green government, that policing in this country has changed, and I see that Katrina Biggs released an article 2 days ago in response to an OIA response, pointing out that 0.8, almost 1% of everyone employed by the New Zealand Police Service is dedicated, their role is dedicated to forwarding rainbow issues. And this shines through in the policing, and it certainly shined through in Albert Park last year, where police didn't protect the women that were there at a ticketed event. Instead, they stood on the edges of the park and allowed the rainbow community to get stuck in and hurt people. I think that this is reflective of the ideological capture of the police service. But with that said, I do get the impression that things are changing, and I know for a fact that frontline police strongly object to that sort of direction coming down from their bosses.
No, that's interesting. Certainly, not an expert in anything to do with police, but I guess it's just like one of those things to kind of wonder where it all went wrong, because you want public service to be service for all and for all issues, and not one prioritized over the other, especially what happened last year with Posse Parker's ticketed event, which is where your video capture was sort of the monumental piece of really shifting the narrative to what the mainstream media was reporting, that it was peaceful and it was fine and it all went as it should. And, here we have some new heroes, and little disregard to actually, taking a woman's space and attacking women. What made you decide to go and film that?
Oh, the Posse Parker thing?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I was just practicing with my new camera, and I had no idea that it was about to make me overnight, instant, worldwide infamous. It's an unusual thing to suddenly go viral, and for millions of people to have seen footage that you've published, particularly which, as you say, directly contradicts the narrative that was being promulgated by the media, who, by the way, still haven't released the footage that they shot in Albert Park, a lot of it, and also by the Labour and Green political parties, both of whom had MPs on the ground participating in that mob who assaulted people. And yet, 24 hours after those events, we had the police congratulating themselves on a job well done. We had the media concocting an entirely fabricated narrative about how peaceful Albert Park was. And we had politicians, for instance, Chloe Swarbrick, on national TV talking about how it was just all love and aroha, which is the point that my footage started getting published and the story changed.
Yeah. What did the story become from your perspective and your videos? How did that change the storyline?
Well, it really did, because the New Zealand media wouldn't touch it, although the international media would. So I started getting contacted by international news agencies and news organisations wanting to use the footage and to interview me and that sort of stuff. None of which I did. I just pushed all the footage out there. I refused all interviews. Just thinking.
But you did give them access to your footage.
Absolutely, everything I've published is
they can see what's going on and they can write about it.
Exactly right, and it tells the story. And in the international media, what the story became was condemnation of New Zealand as a society, and particularly of the New Zealand media, because the contrast, for instance, Andrew Doyle on GB News was doing pieces which were juxtaposing the footage of the violence that was occurring with what the New Zealand media was reporting, and the dichotomy between the two of them just made New Zealand look ridiculous. So one of the major criticisms from an international audience and international media organisations was just how awful our media was, just how poorly our police had behaved, and just how fictitious the narrative that our politicians was pushing. New Zealand as a society was deeply embarrassed on the international stage by those events, and I think that the domestic audience in New Zealand isn't quite aware of just how poorly our country was portrayed.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think that's sort of like what I find so fascinating with the state of news that New Zealanders have been consuming. It's something that I sort of kind of got awakened to from that COVID reporting. And it got to a point where Jacinda Ardern saying her government is the only source of the truth. If you don't hear it from her, then it's not true. And you just sit there and go, what the fuck did she just say?
Yes.
And then you all of a sudden realize what's going on. And then you see the reports that are coming through from citizen journalists like yourself on X give a much more clear view and the reality of New Zealand and what's going on, which is then understood by the world as they see it versus to the legacy media reports that are coming in. It's a much better New Zealand on X versus to New Zealand on Stuff.
Very true. That's quite a contrast, isn't it?
It is. And then we have the Young New Zealander of the Year.
Oh, yes.
And I wrote a satire article on that, the Young Terrorist New Zealander of the Year, which was brilliant. That's the absurdity of life, right? The absurdity of the news. And it seems like my news story is probably more close to being real to that news story. But it's fascinating how it's all shifted, where we ended up in a world somehow celebrating Hamas as a terrorist organization. How the fuck does that happen? And how do we have members of parliament in New Zealand who earn $170,000 a year support a terrorist organization and not condemn their behavior? and hide their behavior because they support a cause that they want to stay in line with and not see the behaviors. So much of this is just kind of,
I know what you mean. And
how the fuck do we end up with this reality?
yes, and I will say that I read your satire from time to time, and it always makes me laugh. It's brilliant. You're like New Zealand's version of Babylon Bee, and often I'm reading your pieces, and it's a 2 paragraphs in before I realise that this is actually parody, and that's, I think, the sign of good parody, where it is actually believably true.
Yeah, it has to be. It's a fine line. You have to pick certain components that make it fake.
Yes.
Which was my Christmas Day special of the guy who threw ketchup sauce on at Posse Parker.
Yes.
It's a guy. It's a man.
Aliana Rabashkin.
Yeah. And how she comes in with a paraglider into Chloe Swarbrick's Christmas party. And
that was fantastic.
And then crash lands on a tree and smacks back on the deck in a bowl of ketchup sauce. It's interesting. Like you have to report it as if it's a real story. So when I start writing with how the media is reporting the story. The headlines are similar. The first 2 paragraphs are similar. You're basically giving the truth of what's happened, but then you flick it around a bit and make it this whole comedy piece. But I like to do them not for just getting a laugh. I like to do them with people really awakening to a truth, awakening to the absurdity, the irony of news, and really understanding that what you're consuming is actually not real. It's not the truth. It's a narrative. The brain is not interested in the truth. The brain is interested in what the brain wants to believe, and you've been fed a narrative. So you can consume my piece, which is not the truth, because it's fake news, but it's believable, right?
True.
And I think that's the like the important piece of why it's so important to not just consume stuff and make that your reality and go make life decisions based on what you're consuming in the news, but actually focus on conversations like these ones. Listening to people on X, watching the video, your videos directly from the source, and see what's going on and the behaviors and things. Like this weekend, you can clearly see how that behavior can compound times 100% with what went on March last year with Posse Parker's event.
Yes, you can, absolutely. You're exactly right. It's the same broad social trend in action. It's like a microcosm of it. But you mentioned Hamas earlier, and I did want to have a quick chat about that, because it's the conflict in the Holy Land is another wedge issue between left and right, where you have people with a left-wing ideology in New Zealand have adopted the Palestinian cause, and an aspect of that is being prepared to overlook, as you say, some of the atrocities that Hamas has pushed. Conversely, on the right, you tend to find people that are tribally pro-Israel. What I think is really astonishing is I see particularly Green Party MPs speaking at demonstrations and joining in the chants and those sorts of things, which is their right to do, and I certainly support their free speech. But I would be very surprised if you were to interview someone like Ricardo Mendes March or Chloe Swarbrick or Golriz Garriman, and if you were to talk about, say, the Balfour Declaration or the King David Hotel or Menachem Begin, Anwar Sadat, any of those issues, they would be entirely unfamiliar with. And the other aspect of it, which I find really fascinating, is that I'm of the generation of people where, for most New Zealanders, Australians, and South Africans, the OE, the overseas experience is part of our culture, where you get young Antipodeans who will go and spend a couple of years living in the United Kingdom and traveling Europe and doing those sorts of things. But back in the late 60s, 1970s, even into the 1980s, a relatively common OE experience for left-wing New Zealanders and Australians was to go and work on a kibbutz in Greater Israel. And by Greater Israel, I mean, outside of not just the 1948 borders, but the 1967. So you're talking about people who held very left-wing views, took a great deal of satisfaction in helping to build what they saw as a socialist experiment that was Israel, by contributing their labor at the time. And now we have this complete about face where here we are 40 years later, and to the left-wing perception of the world, Israel is the bad guy and Hamas is the good guy.
Yeah, the issue in Israel and Palestine is a very contentious subject to discuss. And no matter how much you study the history and how much you go into the detail, you're always missing pieces to it. And it's very dangerous to form a very strong opinion based on missing pieces and ideologies and firm positions that then misses all the other angles. That's essentially the reason why we have a Green Party in New Zealand, members of Parliament in New Zealand, taxpayer funded people that have very strong support view of supporting Palestine without realizing that the latest events was the cause of a terrorist organization. And the deeply rooted organization that's somehow getting funded to be so sophisticated and organize the attacks they're doing. So you can go back to these main events, right? You can go back to World War II when, the world was looking for a land for the Jews. The Europeans didn't want them. The Brits didn't want them. America didn't want them. And they're like, well, actually, we want the land that we have history in. And, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's go take a piece of that and give you that. And then that becomes the modern riff that's been going on for the last 75 odd years, right? It's a contentious subject to discuss. Always gets out of hand, out of control, but even gets more dangerous when you have political parties that have very strong ideological view of what's happening and organizing thousands and thousands of protesters and infiltrating universities and cities and really, becoming, which a consequence of that is, shifting the needle of what anti-Semitism is. All of a sudden, it's okay to be an anti-Semite. It's a very contentious subject. And it's even what I'm saying, full disclosure, is probably not the truth, right? I'm just trying to piece together and have an observation, have a view. And like you said, Chloe Zorbrig coming to the podcast, all of these people are invited. I've reached out to them. They're welcome to come on the show. It's nothing to do about attacking people or, it's important that the podcast is a platform where you have different type of conversations, not just one-sided conversations. Debbie Narawa Packer, I was invited her. She didn't want to come because I supported David Seymour on something. It's like, come on, you can't live in a society where you cancel conversations because we have different views. Because then you're just pretending to be happy or you're pretending to exist. It's a contentious subject, what's going on in Israel and Palestine and the latest event of, all the funding that was going to that UN organization. Isn't that crazy?
Yes,
you hear about that?
yes, I did with UNRWA, and yes, there have been issues from time to time, and the specifics of that, I'm sure that the truth will come out about that
Yeah.
all in due course. But I certainly concur with you that the level of our discourse about these issues is reductio ad absurdum. It is an intensely complicated issue, as you say, and it should be. I think from a New Zealand perspective, the best that we can hope for is that the lives of innocent people are protected. Beyond that, I don't see any value in us having those sorts of discussions and arguing with one another about an issue that we can't change.
Yeah. So what's happening in Auckland CBD? How often do you film out there, and what are you looking for? How do you go find events to film, and how do you go about doing all of that?
Often I'm just wandering around with my camera. What I like to do is to capture city scenes to give the audience a view of what's going on.
Yeah.
I particularly like to be presenting things that are lovely. I'm not joking. I really do. But it's things like you'll see there'll be some young people that gather on a weekend and they dance together. Yeah. And, it's just fantastic to see things like that happening in our city. But, of course, what's newsworthy tends to be much more sort of conflict and confrontational. So it's stuff like demonstrations and what have you. There's also a little bit of how would you say, moral obligation and civic duty, in that there are some issues which, as you know, the media won't touch, and to a large degree it's fallen to me to cover instead.
Yeah.
So it's things like like after Albert Park, I started. Many of the victims contacted me, and they were not being well served. They were being fobbed off by the police and so on. And some of these women were deeply traumatized.
Yeah.
So an aspect of some of the things that I've been doing is to help them have their stories be told, help them navigate the bureaucracies and things like that, and to ensure that that all of these things are issues that are presented and within the public mind. So with that in the background, there are a couple of court cases concerning Posey Parker, which I've been covering, and to be fair, that some other media have as well. Chaps like Philip Crump at News Talk ZB Plus has been very good at keeping an eye on things, get some coverage on the platform and so on. So there is a little bit, and also Reality Check Radio, organisations like that and yourself that are a little bit more keen to be even-handed and actually tell the story that the mainstream media won't.
Yeah, it's changing, man. It's it's a new world thanks to X, thanks to X. It's a new world. And I'm very excited to see so many New Zealanders come on the platform, share stories, do the news, do it in a way that people share news. Before all these media organizations and mainstream media organization, news used to be such a local thing, and it was through conversations, through people capturing things that they're interested in, you walking around with a camera and you capturing beautiful things in the city, and then all of a sudden there are bad things happening in the city, and then you're like, well, why is the media not capturing that? I've got a responsibility. It's my community, it's my city, it's my, it's a society that I want to contribute to. And that's sort of the exciting thing that I find about what's going on with X. And what's going on with X in New Zealand, and how it's being used and how it's providing the news. which is super awesome.
I think so too, and I think it's the rise of citizen journalism is enabled
Yeah.
by X and its free speech approach to social media, and I recently said that we the people are the media now, and to a large extent that's true. And a large part of what I try to do is to say to people, look, you have the facility in your pocket. All you need to do is you see something happening, pull out your phone and film it, and
Yeah.
get it out there, because that sort of hyper local coverage of things as they happen is unbiased. It tends to be neutral. You show the footage, you let people make up their own minds, and it's arisen over 20 to 30 years. You'll remember there were shows like back in the 90s. You might be too young to remember. There was a show called America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right. So you have people, and they've it tended to be Americans who had early VHS video cameras and things like that, who happened to be filming, and something funny would happen. The cat would jump over the dog or what have you. Right.
Yeah.
And they made a whole show about it, and people found it interesting.
Yeah.
But then you sort of fast forward into the early 2000s, and you have the very best coverage of the planes flying into the World Trade Center is people who happen to be filming, right?
Yeah.
That is the seminal coverage of really core critical events that changed our world, and they're not coming to us from the media. They're happening because someone had the presence of mind to pull out their phone and start filming. So,
Yeah.
if there's one thing the audience takes away from this podcast, please, if you see something happening, film it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a it's a beautiful thing to do. I think there's a saying that goes, imagine if your life was filmed 24/7. How would you behave? The psychological mind would say you would try to live a higher self
True.
if you were filmed. So getting comfortable with filming and creating content and not just consuming it, and being comfortable with the stick that comes with it, it's also an important piece, and that's why a lot of people don't do it. And it's something that really should be taught in school, in getting kids comfortable with being part of media, create content. I do it with my kids. We have podcast conversations that are not recorded.
Yes.
Right.
That's a wonderful.
They're just, I'll have my 7-year-old join me in a conversation, and he's getting comfortable with the camera,
That's fantastic.
and the voice. He can hear his sound and back and forth. It's a good way to get kids comfortable. And obviously, kids watch so much reality TV on YouTube, other kids creating content. There's Ryan's World. He makes $40 million a year on YouTube. He's a 6-year-old.
Wow.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them on YouTube. So my son's, it's like, Dad, when are you going to buy me a camera? I want to, go and film what I do and this and that. I want to put it on YouTube. So it's getting there. But, we want to see more of that. And you're very right in terms of how since the early 2000s, the most important moments have been captured by people just picking up their phones, taking a video. The best one that's happened this year was the video of a Jew coming out of a tunnel.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
How good was that?
A Hasidic Jew, I think was is that
I
the
have no idea.
right? And he was climbing in New York City.
Yeah,
is-
outside
right.
a synagogue. Yeah, and it's just some passerby takes out his phone and films this Jew coming out of a tunnel like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I saw that video, and I haven't had a television for an awfully long time, so it's the case that I miss out on the zeitgeist of things. For instance, I'd be pretty sure that I've never heard a Taylor Swift song.
Yeah.
But it's only because people say, "Oh, hey, have you seen this, that, and the other thing?" And I hadn't followed the story of the tunnels in New York at all. And then someone sent me that video.
Yeah.
I was like, Mike, my goodness, what am I actually looking
It's
at here? Of this
fascinating.
chap emerge, and
Yeah.
and then you dig into the story, and it just seems crazy. I mean, for someone like me who doesn't watch the news
Yeah.
on TV and things, and I'm catching up with the story. I'm thinking
It's
this
crazy.
can't be true.
Yeah, so there's just some guy walking past, sees a Jew coming out of a tunnel. He films it, put it on Instagram, goes viral, and then the cops are called in. They're like, well, there's something going on here. There's a lot of Jews coming out of a tunnel. And they get into the synagogue, and there's a lot of people filming on the video. There's a huge hole in the wall, and there's a lot of Jews holding this dirty mattress to block it. And then the Jews are fighting with the cops. It's brilliant.
It's just astonishing, and
brilliant.
yes, it's one of those circumstances where you think this. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, like when it's being explained to you.
It's satire. It's
yes.
like this can't be true, and this is all happening right in the midst of a debate about who's built all these tunnels under hospitals in Gaza.
Yes,
Is it the
yes.
Israels or is it and then you have Jews running an underground tunnel network in the middle of New York. It's brilliant.
It was. I did catch an interview with the rabbi, who was very, I mean, of course, obviously, embarrassed about how it had made their congregation look and things like that. And my heart went out to him in that you could see that he was very much caught in the middle of events that he didn't have an awful lot of control over. And of course, while this is happening, you have so much media influence, or rather media perspective from one side or the other saying, using these events to concoct a broader narrative, which is tenuous at best. And all of those sorts of things are interesting in themselves.
I as a kid, I used to love the National Geographic magazines. And the most iconic one is the picture of the Afghani girl with green eyes.
Isn't she beautiful? Beautiful
and
girl.
I love that kind of journalism of these National Geographic photographers would go around the world. They captured the real news.
They did. Have you seen the photograph of her?
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
He's gone back and found her and taken the photo of her now. I think she was in this new latest photo, maybe 45, 50 years old.
It's incredible, the contrast between the two of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can, and I found that, really touching. That poor girl, she was just so beautiful in that photograph,
And
then you
young
see-
and excited about
That's
life and what life is, and that's it's beautiful thing about life. As we are kids, we're awakened to life, and we're excited, and everything is and then we go through life, and you can capture someone's emotions and experiences of life. Once they're like 45, 50.
Yes,
It's fascinating.
And it was obvious that she'd lived a very, very hard life after that photograph was taken, and the juxtaposition between those two photographs is really quite startling.
Yeah. I love that kind of journalism, that sort of capturing real news,
Yes,
capturing real stories just through an image, through a
it's
video.
something.
It's not edited. It's not a Netflix documentary that's run through a script has a bias of a story they're telling. It's just captured purely by an individual, and there is so much truth in that image that tells the story you don't have to write about.
I couldn't agree more. There's a magnificence in our world, and there are some times when a photographer will capture that in a single image, and it's startlingly beautiful. And certainly that photograph is one of them.
Yeah, it is.
The other one that other National Geographic photograph that a lot of people comment upon is Kevin Carter's photograph in Africa of the young girl crawling towards United Nations aid station while a vulture waits for her to collapse. Do you know that photograph?
No, tell me.
Well, it's quite terrible.
There's a vulture circling someone, waiting for her to collapse, and then go like,
Yeah, shall I dig it out? You really should see this photograph.
yeah, sure.
Do you want to see
take
it?
it out.
Okay, hang on. Everyone,
Vultures are interesting. Did you know that in Mongolia, I believe, they have this vulture ceremony that they feed the dead to the vultures? Have you ever heard of that?
no.
Yeah, I think it's Mongolia, I'm pretty sure. One of those crazy countries. It's actually a ritual. They, feed the dead to the vultures. Ah. Fuck.
So it's a really startling photograph that she's a couple of kilometers short of a United Nations aid station, and she's about to die, and the vulture knows it, and is doing what vultures do. Now, Kevin Carter, there's quite a story behind that photograph, and that as soon as it was published, Kevin Carter was. I think he might have won a Pulitzer for it. He certainly won some sort of award. But he also took an awful lot of criticism for no longer being, for maintaining his position as a photographer, as a neutral observer, as opposed to actually intervening and helping the little girl. And in fact, he was confronted by this question for the rest of his life, which wasn't very long.
Did he step in to help?
He never said whether he did or not, and eventually unalived himself not long afterwards in his mid-30s, largely because of the consequence of that photograph. So
Wow.
it's there is a lot of photography like that, and you look at Life magazine, to a lesser extent Time, certainly National Geographic. Some of the imagery that they've produced has been monumentous like that.
Yeah. I love a lot of the videos that are in, a lot of David Attenborough documentaries about life and plants and animals and, videos of how nature actually works, that, animals are very, very, cruel. They go for it. They kill and they. So we're talking about the war that humans create. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it ideology? Is it misinformation? Is it history? Is it bending the truth? Is it all of that stuff? Why would a terrorist organization decide to attack civilians, and then why would Israel decide to overreact and go kill a lot of civilians? And all of that stuff is why do we do that? Is it nature, or is it a consequence of how society is structured? I'd argue that a lot of it is nature. Just look at the chimpanzee species. These guys fucking fight.
Yes, so
The chimpanzee civilization. These guys the murders they cause and the tribes that take over. I wish somebody go and film them. Wasn't there a documentary on Netflix, what is it called, the Chimp Empire?
I didn't see that, but I think it was Jane Goodall, who's the Jane Goodall's the researcher into primate behavior, who spends an awful lot of time in Africa.
Wow.
And I think it was her who did the Great Chimp War. Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, so it was about maybe 30 years ago, where there were two tribes of chimps that went to war with each other. And as you say, it was really barbaric, that they behave like this. And it was almost, as you say, it's almost proto-humanoid behavior, where, okay, we're one group, we're another group, and it's gloves off, total war.
Yeah, and chimps are 99.8% similar to the human DNA.
Yes, but so are bananas. I read that somewhere, something like,
Is that
bananas. True? Yeah, bananas share something like 98.7% of the same DNA as humans.
So we're eating humans when we eat bananas.
Not quite, but it's the genetic similarities of carbon-based life forms.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It is fascinating, and videos are fascinating. There's just so much story out there that's captured in film about life and what goes on.
Yes, and so much which is missing as well.
Yeah, a lot of it is missing, and that's what I love. What's going on with X? There's so much videos, and some of it is very disturbing. But it's what's missing. It's what's not being reported by media. It's so much of the news is being cut out because it doesn't fit a narrative.
Very true, very true. And as you say, that's the advantage of citizen journalism, is that you see the raw material presented, hopefully from which you can form your own conclusions, which the media is very much disinclined to allow the audience to do. But that said, I am quite a sensitive soul, and I do find some of the material on X to be very, very disconcerting. I really don't like to see people coming to harm, and some of the war porn that we've been getting out of the Holy Land, out of Ukraine, and things like that is just terrible. And
Yeah,
I think
it does shake you up for sure,
It
and
really
we're not
does.
used to it, and that's probably why.
I think so. I think so. But it's just yes. I particularly don't like to see people coming to harm, and yes, it's there are times when I just know that if I go onto X, that there's been some sort of world event where terrible things have happened, and
Yeah,
I find it difficult.
yeah. But I think it's an important piece. You have to confront yourself with that. You have to see videos of illegal immigrants beating up civilians on the street. There's a video that I watched of an illegal immigrant in Italy just, beating the crap out of this woman and
Oh, yeah,
tearing her
yeah.
shirt off. And there are civilians just sitting on the street watching it happen. It's like, what are you guys doing? And then you see all the illegal immigration that's going on in the States and the west border, and they're coming in the thousands, and they're all being put in a bus and shipped to New York because New York is all about supporting them. It's like, oh, you have them then.
I think that's great. I think that was just so wonderful as a response
Yeah, it's
from the governors of Texas and
Yeah,
Florida and those southern
yeah.
states to say, okay, well, if you're a sanctuary city, I think is the term that they use to say that
Yeah.
they're refugee friendly, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but the response of putting asylum seekers and recent arrivals onto planes and buses and sending them places like Martha's Vineyard and New York City, I just thought that was genius. It's just
Yeah.
because it's fair enough, right, to share the burden, right? Like, it's very
Yeah.
easy if you're in the northeast of the United
Yeah.
States to say, look, Texas, this is your problem to deal with, but you've got to deal with it and you've got to accept this. That's not how countries work.
No.
Right? Like, the burden needs
Yeah,
to be
you can't just sit
evenly
in New
shared.
York and be like, hey, open borders, we got to accommodate all these people. Okay, it's comfortable for you to say, how about we send some to you in a bus?
Yes, yes, but the other thing is that I've seen the reaction to that now within some of those liberal American states is that Democrat Party run cities and states have started adopt a refugee program. Have you seen any of those programs?
No.
Well, you're going to love this. So what the Democrats have been doing is saying, look, if you've got a spare room in your home, we don't have enough places and shelters. So if you
I've
can
heard
adopt a
about
refugee,
that.
right? Well, some of the videos are great because there's one which I'll send to you because I really shouldn't laugh, but it was a woman who had taken in a lady from, I think, Peru, perhaps, or perhaps Ecuador, that sort of part of South America.
Yeah.
And this American lady, the host family, was talking about how great it was to have to be having some home cooked meals and to have some help with the cleaning and so on. And while she was talking about how lovely it was to host this woman, the video footage was of this woman working for her, effectively cooking meals, doing the dishes, cleaning stuff. And the comment from the person presenting it was, well, look at this. The Democrats have actually reintroduced slavery in the United States. And it really was. Like, you could see that this woman she was just completely using this poor immigrant lady as free labor, you know. It was just astonishing. And it reminded me of a quote from Family Guy, where there was an episode of Family Guy where they're going back through old family photographs, and one of the photographs was a picture of a black gentleman.
Yeah.
And the comment was, well, who's this? Oh, that was just a chap that we gave food and lodging to in exchange for a few chores.
Yeah.
Meaning a slave. And that's effectively what is happening in these liberal cities.
But wouldn't that be like au pairs? Au pairs kind of work in that structure, isn't it?
They do, but I think that tends to be a little bit more formalized and contracted. Like with an au pair, it's a proper employment agreement. Typically through an agency. Certainly that's how it works in New Zealand. But
what are you going to do with an illegal immigrant that you've given them a spare room? Like, what are you going to do with them? Like, maybe help them find a job. You can't do that. Send them to school. You can't do that. What do you do with them?
Yeah,
let them make food for you and clean your house.
Yes. Which is just as terrible when you look at it like that. But Gary Lineker, the footballer. I understand that he took in a refugee for a brief period, long enough for a headline. I don't think it was too much longer than that. So there's an aspect of performative caring about it, I think. For some of these people, it's like, look, look what a lovely person I am because I'm doing this.
Yeah, it's a lot of the reason why people do charity is for selfish reasons.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's why they do charity. Well, that's why these famous people do charity. It's all, it's all just selfish reasons to kind of get themselves in that status game, that status position. It's like Trevor Mallard, why would he be a sir?
Oh, yes, a knighthood for Trevor Mallard. Goodness.
It's like, what the fuck? But that's the status game. You get yourself in these positions, Speaker of the House. What the fuck? Like, why would a Speaker of the House be, I don't know. Anyway, but that's kind of like the, if you want to give somebody respect for what they've done, you give it to the person who created the River of Freedom documentary that captures people protesting outside the parliament for their freedom, not the guy who's blasting music at them.
Yes, that's true, and there is an aspect of that, and there is often an awful lot of criticism of those of the appointments and the New Zealand honours system, because it has been deeply politicised by particularly the Labour Party, who have used it to pump specific ideologies, and they've chosen some fairly awful people to receive them, including Jacinda Ardern. It's typical for a New Zealand Prime Minister to receive a knighthood at the end of their tenure. That typically happens. But what also typically happens is to avoid any perception of impropriety, that there is a delay until the opposition party is in office. So, for instance, it's unusual for a Labour Prime Minister to be awarded a knighthood by a Labour government. Typically, it would be awarded by a national government. However, in Ardern's case, it was rushed through with unseemly haste, simply because the Labour government would have been aware that the National Party, a national-led government, particularly one featuring David Seymour and Winston First, ACT and New Zealand First, Winston Peters, sorry, I'm afraid I called him Winston first. With those three parties, they would be more likely to say, well, hang on a second, is Jacinda Ardern, Trevor Mallard, people like that really deserving of a New Zealand honour. Another aspect to consider is that National is much more aware of the position that it puts the sovereign in that, you know, the right to appoint an individual to the New Zealand Order of Merit or to the Order of New Zealand, or indeed pretty much any other order within the Commonwealth, is within the exclusive gift of the sovereign. It's done on the recommendation of a subcommittee of cabinet, but if the wrong person is appointed, it's the sovereign who looks bad.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure it did because everyone was pretty pissed off.
Yes. Well, it's things like, you know, Jimmy Savile, right, or Ron Briley. You know, when an individual has their knighthood stripped from them for poor behaviour, it's very much a bad look, and it calls the whole system into question.
It does. What else is happening that you are planning to film?
Well, the chap who is accused of pouring tomato juice over Kelly Jane Keane Mitchell, Posey Parker, there's a hearing in his case coming up at the end of this month, so there'll be some potential coverage in that. Whether or not he chooses to change his plea from innocent to guilty. If not, then he'll be committed to trial. So there'll be some news around that. And the other thing is that in early March, around about the 7th, the granny basher, the young chap who seriously assaulted the lady in Albert Park, is due for sentencing. And his victim will be in attendance here in Auckland for that, so there will be some coverage around those sorts of things.
Yeah,
I'll be trying to cover those. I'm a little bit constrained in one regard, in that in one of those cases, I'm a potential witness, and I've previously made an application to the judge for access to the court so that I can see what's going on. But I've been specifically by name prohibited from doing that, because I could be called as a witness. I mean, I doubt I ever will be, but it's effectively being used to keep independent journalists such as myself at arm's length.
interesting. So can you object that? Can you still go film it? Are you going to film it, or what are you going to do?
Well, I can't. Well, I've taken advice from my own barristers and from other lawyers that I know, who've said, look, you know, that if you're interested in, if you're interested in allowing justice to take its course, and I very much am, I believe in the judicial system, it is better to stay away, absolutely, so that there's no sense of impropriety of you being there. So when the court cases around Rubashkin are being undertaken, I won't be anywhere near the vicinity. However, I do know people who will, and I'll be using my social media reach to however little that is, to push out the reports and any video footage that they capture.
Interesting. Are you going to record Gulreese's court?
I'm sort of in two minds about that, and I sort of put this out there that, you know, that I really am in two minds, and I asked people whether or not I should, and the consensus view was that yes, it's going on, it's newsworthy, you should cover it.
Yeah.
And there's an aspect of that, but I'm also very conscious that you know, that there's a human being at the centre of this, and that she's already paid a very, very high price for things, and mistakes that she's made I think that affording her the opportunity to get on with the rest of her life, there's an argument in favour of that. And the other thing, the other aspect that I'm very, very conscious of with someone like that is that she comes from a fairly conservative background. One of her parents is Sunni, the other is Shia. That they're people who would want the best in life for their daughter, as every parent does, who have been deeply embarrassed by these things. And I think that that a certain amount of compassion should be directed towards the individual. Also conscious that that in the background there's a family there who are traumatized by these sorts of things.
Yeah, good on you, man. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Is there is a justice system, and justice system is about making sure people who have been harmed get justice, but also the people that have caused harm have a pathway to redemption. And in her case, she's already taken so much of that brunt of it, and she's spoken about what's happened and how she's going to redeem herself. And I'm sure a lot of people would not give her an inch because of her stance and her position that she's taken, and being a lawyer and fighting for bringing justice to people that have been done wrong. And then she finds herself in that position. But no, it's there's argument for both the sides.
There are. It's quite a moral conundrum.
And so then the question becomes, what position does an independent journalist like yourself take? And where do you balance that, the right thing to do from a human perspective, and being conscious of family and the harm that, the more harm on already inflicted wound may cause, versus to you have to do the news.
Yes, there's that, and that's the consensus, is that that I should present it neutrally, as I tend to do. I think that the only issue where I don't, typically my approach is I put material out there and say, look, this is it. I'm presenting it neutrally. Make up your own mind. The issue where I tend to actually allow my own point of view to come through is around the trans rights activists, just because there's, on one hand, you have presenting things neutrally and balanced, but then on the other, you have an obligation to tell the truth of things, and the truth of things in their case is that they behave terribly and they're a threat to our democracy. And I don't pull back from expressing that. But where Golriz is concerned, the consensus is that I should present the footage and report upon it, because you know how things go. Like once your journalistic credentials have been accepted, there is information available via the Ministry of Justice that is not available to the general public. Things like agreed statements of facts and so on and so forth, which journalists use as the source material. And having access to that is one thing, and being able to report upon it. And some of the reporting that I've seen around that has been fair and balanced. And I'm more than happy to participate in that and say, look, okay, here's what's happened in court. Here's what was said. This, that, and the other thing. That's fairly reasonable. But I think what a lot of people expect from me is for me to be rocking up there with my camera and to do perp walk footage of, her looking downtrodden, coming to court, going out of court, looking like the perpetrator, and that sort of thing. And I'm not sure, like, while there are some people that would take a certain amount of satisfaction from that, and while it is the truth of the story that the media will never show, I'm not necessarily convinced that it's a right and proper approach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I get it. It's
It's a tough one, right? Because the Greens, they are just so terrible. They're anti-democratic. They're authoritarian in their approach. They're extremist views on a huge number of issues, everything from free speech through to international relations and race relations.
Capitalism.
All of those things, that they really are an existential threat to civilization, in my opinion. And the opportunity, yes, the opportunity exists to crucify Golriz, to make the point, well, look, here is one of these people who's been telling you what to do and telling you what to think and telling you how much better your life would be if you just let her make all of your decisions for you.
Yeah.
And she's misbehaved, and by crucifying her, it could do damage to their ideology. So there are people who are looking to use her for that. And
I think the mistake that you might make is you're giving her an inch. And if you give her that inch, it's what the Argentinian president talks about. And I posted a video of him. It's like if you give these fucktards an inch, they'll fuck you up.
They will take a mile.
They will, so that's the thing. It's like, if we're going to give her an inch, which is what the media has been doing, and then the Prime Minister comes and says, oh, it's tough for women to be in Parliament. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? I voted for you, man. What the fuck are you doing?
Yes, yeah, and that's true. That is true, and that is a very solid counter argument, particularly because if she was, as we know, she's
going to come back.
I think she possibly will. But if she was Erica Stanford, for instance, from the National Party, or Brooke Van Velden from ACT,
yeah, good luck.
The media would have they wouldn't have left her alone. It would be wall-to-wall coverage, 24 hours a day for weeks, if not months. And so there is a fair and balanced aspect, I think, to that. But my own approach is I sort of think of Golriz as being kind of yesterday's news. She's gone now. Her potential to impact our affairs is, at least for the time being, non-existent. And a better focus of our attention is those who are in a position to influence things. The likes of Chloe Swarbrick, and you may have seen that I've been pushing out some videos that I've created of interspersing footage of the violence that the communities she is so keen to promote commit, interspersed with her talking about how that violence actually didn't happen.
Yeah.
And what I've been trying to do is to sort of push, like, look, listen to what these people say, what Julianne Genter says, what Chloe Swarbrick or Ricardo Mendez March, the ideology that these people are pushing, they're not hiding it. They're literally telling us that they don't believe in capitalism and democracy, and they want those things to go away. And I think that they're much more worthy of attention than someone who's now gone burger.
What do you see the danger of Chloe Swarbrick?
Well, she is actually smarter than she appears, and she does have the art of rhetoric. But I think that my greatest concern is that she's an ideologue who is absolutely, utterly convinced of her own righteousness. And if history has taught us anything, it's that we ought to be very, very cautious when we're dealing with people who cannot be convinced that they are anything other than 100% correct. And she's one of those people. And the other concern I have is that, but beyond her demagoguery, which she's very good at, is just how massive her constituency is amongst young people. They love her to bits. It's the next generation.
It's the consequence of fucking universities having these.
It is.
It is. Narratives that kids have felt. Most people that go to university have that experience, but for some reason, what's happening now, it's like next level. What we've seen with Harvard University, for example, and the anti-Semitism and their presidents that just don't have the ability to actually say,
Plagiarism.
yeah, pleasure.
Astonishing.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, so I feel like the likes of Chloe will be doing a successful job in getting into the minds of these young people and pushing a narrative, and that's why they want to legalize voters from the age of 16
Yes.
because they know that they can get to them. And it's like, no, maybe we should shift the voting to 21.
Yes.
That's
Or
probably
25, 30.
25, yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I think so.
Bring in an IQ test.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those sorts of good things.
Did you see that Joe Biden is not going to do a cognitive test?
I feel very sorry for that man. I mean, it's obvious that his cognitive
There's some
decline
really
is-
good footage about him tripping on stairs.
Yes, it's oh goodness, it's just it's been obvious for a long time that well he's an older gentleman, and I think that he's had a lifetime in public service, and it's a case of God, when can your servant rest? He should retire gracefully out of the public eye, because at the moment he's an object of derision and sympathy.
Yeah, I think if you never know whether it's the truth or not the truth, or he might be much more better conditioned than what it's projected in the videos that we watch and the videos that are edited on social media. You know all about that. But the worst scenario is he's having a debate on national television with Donald Trump.
I can't see that
And
working out very well.
Yeah. If you can't remember the years that you were the VP, it's 2008 to 2014 or 16. You were there for 8 years. How can you not remember being the VP?
It really is quite astonishing, isn't it?
Oh, it's gonna be an interesting. I do think he's gonna lose. Or he's either gonna retire or he's gonna lose. I don't think. I think it's Americans have come to realize that the world was better when Trump was the president. And we talk about the narratives that are used by media and the videos they create, and how that machine attacked Trump, and for all sorts of different reasons. But a lot of Americans agree that a lot of his policies were effective and world was better before that. And
Yes, and-
even the Democrats are realizing this whole ideology of diversity, equality, inclusion, open borders. It's crazy. It's gone too far. They don't even believe it themselves. And it's the same thing with my body, my choice. You talk to any Democrat, it's like, well, do you really believe in this? Like, how many abortions before it's like you've got a fucking issue? You don't know how to put a condom on, right? It's probably 3.
Yes.
If you have more than 3 abortions and you're having one every year or every 3 months or every 6 months, like what the fuck are you doing?
Yes.
You know, so all of this stuff is just like ideology, and it sounds great. It's like, Obama stuff, like yes we can, and all that kind of just it's not reality.
No, it isn't. Or be kind. That's the one that always gets me. Oh gosh.
Why did you use those words on my podcast?
Sorry, mate. But you kind of opened the door when you said you quoted Jacinda Ardern's "We are your single source of truth."
Yeah. Well, that inspired the single source, which is
Of course it did too. Yes. Yeah.
There it
Good
is.
connection. Good connection.
Yeah. I think I did a post on X asking for recommendations for the name, and the single source was put on. I was like, yep.
Perfect.
And guess what the email address is for the contact person at the single source?
I can't tell me.
Jacinda. Jacinda at singlesource.co.nz.
Fantastic.
And I have the signature in there as well. So when I get inquiries, I just respond back, and then people respond back going, "Thanks, Jacinda."
Chat, would you mind? I've got to use the restroom. Can we take a break for a couple
Take
of
a
minutes?
break. Yeah, restroom
Okay.
break, everyone. We're back from a quick toilet break.
Sorry about that, everybody.
That's all right. What else has been happening?
Well, there's the IPCA stuff is coming up.
Oh yeah, what's that?
So the Independent Police Complaints Authority launched an investigation into the police response to the Posey Parker riot last year and the events surrounding that. That report was due to be published in February, around about now, and that was the expectation that was set by the investigators. And it was announced about a week ago that the inquiry has broadened and that there will be a delay until June for publication of that. And what's quite fascinating is that I was one of the people interviewed as part of their inquiries. They interviewed me maybe about 3 months ago, and your audience can hear a recording of my testimony on my YouTube channel. But because I'm a witness, I'm due to be provided with an embargoed copy of their report prior to general publication. But I wasn't informed that there was going to be a delay in that. None of the witnesses were. The complainants and the victims from Albert Park were contacted by the IPCA, and a couple of them contacted me to say, well, look, we've been informed that there is this delay and that the IPCA is taking a broader approach. Now, for the victims of Albert Park, their perspective is that the IPCA intends to whitewash what happened by saying, well, look, rather than the specific issues of how the police represented the rainbow community's interests as opposed to the broader interests of New Zealand society in Albert Park, they're taking a broader perspective to say, well, look, there are some issues with the way that police handled demonstrations in general. I'm inclined to think that is probably right, and that the IPCA as an organisation does have a history of being fairly pro-police rather than being fairly even-handed and pro-justice. I think that's probably a reasonable criticism. And I would also say that I've attended quite a few demonstrations over the last 12 months, everything from co-governance through to pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, rainbow issues, what have you. And with the sole exception of Albert Park, I've seen the police perform a very, very good job. I don't think that there are many criticisms that can be levelled against them for the way they have done that. Although you may have seen that I've interviewed two people, two pro-Israel counter-demonstrators at the pro-Palestine demonstrations, Daniel and Lucy. I've just, 5-minute interviews with the two of them. I think that their arrests are worthy of investigation. I think that's a fair outcome, but I personally don't believe that it should be rolled up into the very specific issues around Posey Parker and Albert Park.
Wow, that's fascinating. And what do you think will be the outcome of this investigation, or what do you?
I think it's hard to say. I think that by broadening the inquiry, it seems to me likely that the IPCA intends to obfuscate some of the issues. I think some of the questions around Albert Park are really, really specific, like who gave the instruction to police to pull back, why when the rainbow crowd was tearing down the metal barriers did police even at that point not intervene? Why did the police press so hard to find out which hotel Posey Parker was staying at, and within hours of them discovering that, she was receiving threatening letters underneath the door of her hotel room? Why was Rhonda Stace? Rhonda Stace is a transgender individual who is employed by the New Zealand Police and is a previous board member of Auckland Pride. That person was liaising between police and Auckland Pride and the various rainbow groups. The content of one particular email that Rhonda Stace sent, either representing Auckland Pride to the police or as a position of a serving police officer sent to Auckland Pride, has been suppressed. In the OIA response, the entire content of that email, which is pages long apparently, has been blacked out. And you know, if these issues are not dealt with and seem to be dealt with fairly by the IPCA, I very much doubt that they will be meeting the expectations of the victims who were so thoroughly traumatized by what happened to them at Albert Park.
Wow. Wow. It's fascinating, like how much detail there is in the story and the power of the videos that you've captured and how it's feeding into, you know, being a witness and being interviewed by the independent organization that's doing this investigation, and all these different details of having, you know, how can people find what hotel she's staying at and sending her letters, and it seems like it's an underground network behavior that is not it's intentional for causing harm than actually standing for your rights. There's nothing about it as peaceful in any shape or form.
No, agreed. And yeah, so I think that it would be fair to say that operational mistakes were made, but there's the ideological aspect to it as well, that you know, it was very, very obvious that the authorities were taking sides and were not at all even-handed. And there's an international aspect to it too. You know, Posey Parker, she has a podcast, and I don't listen to it, but I know whenever she's mentioned my name, because I suddenly start getting, you know, all of the death threats and the hate from the rainbow community. And this was particularly apparent in September when she was due to return to New Zealand to conduct another attempt at speaking in public to coincide with the court appearance of the man who's accused of pouring tomato juice on her. But the content of the police communications from March was provided to me anonymously, and as soon as I published that, Kelly J. Keane Mitchell, Posey Parker, her family convinced her that New Zealand was not a safe country to visit, and she cancelled her trip.
Wow.
And she announced that on her podcast to the cheers of joy from the rainbow community here in New Zealand. And the first that I knew about it was when those sorts of people started making me aware of it.
Wow, New Zealand is not a safe place to be.
Yes, yes, and it's certainly not for her.
Sad thing to hear.
It is, and and we were embarrassed internationally once again by that firstly that a woman can't come to our country and speak, but secondly that in the circumstance where she'd had to flee the country in March, that the authorities and particularly the police refused, when requested, they refused to guarantee her safety. So, you know, I mean, if you're Jacinda Ardern getting married in the Hawke's Bay, you can be absolutely guaranteed that you'll have red carpet service from the New Zealand police, ensuring that you and your guests are not disturbed in the slightest. However, if you're Kelly J. Keane Mitchell, a women's rights activist who's been assaulted and threatened in our country, the police don't want to know.
Yeah, and I hope that she comes back and she speaks and has that opportunity to speak and stand up for women and women's right and women that want to be part of that. And we deal with this issue of trans people causing harm instead of just enjoying the space that they have.
I certainly concur, and I feel quite badly about the fact that information I released led directly to her changing her travel plans, and I very much do hope, as you do, that she does return and that she has that opportunity and that we can start to rebuild our international reputation. But our first step in that is going to be the impending visit of Graham Linehan to New Zealand. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Okay, so Graham Linehan is a wonderful comedic writer. He's the creator of exceptionally well-regarded television shows like Father Ted, The IT Crowd, Black Books. He's had a very long and successful career in British comedy, but he's also been very gender critical, and because of that, he was cancelled very badly by the establishment, particularly the media establishment in Britain. But despite that, has continued to be a prominent and outspoken voice on women's rights, and particularly around the protection of women and children against the ideology of trans. The Free Speech Union of New Zealand has wonderfully invited him to come and conduct a speaking tour. So he's here next month in March, between March 11th and I think March 21st, to conduct 3 speaking events, Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. Now, because he is he's very much a hate figure for the rainbow community, like J.K. Rowling, Posey Parker, Graham Linehan, he's up there as a hate figure for them. So before Posey Parker returns to New Zealand, we have Graham Linehan, and if the trans rights activists kick off with more violence at his events, then I think she's going to be even less inclined to ever return to our country.
Yeah, I think that stuff just has to stop. I don't get this idea of having these hate figures and this rubbish cancel culture of the likes of J.K. Rowling and you know, it just doesn't make any sense. And I wish him a good tour. And are you going to be filming his visit and the tour?
Yes, I will. I intend to film outside. I have approached the Free Speech Union and asked for permission to film inside. I haven't heard back from them yet, but of course, that is very much their prerogative, whether or not I film or not. Actually, inside the venue, and I'm sure they'll cover it one way or another anyway. But I would like the latitude to be able to sort of move between outside and inside, so I can capture things.
That'll be good capturing of the inside and the outside, and
I think so.
And from the inside, you can show what he's talking about, and then connecting the behaviors of what's happening outside from trans community, following a template of creating hate figures and how they are using that to activate the mainstream media to then, become sympathizers. It's actually peaceful protest, not hate protest, but you can then kind of mix the two footage, inside, outside, to kind of see what's going on, which is what was kind of, I would love to have seen that with your shooting of the Troons this weekend.
Yes.
It's like, if this behavior is happening in the outside, what are they actually discussing inside?
Yes.
Who is the audience and what are they talking about? It would be really good as a follow-up to see if you can find some information about what was discussed inside, and maybe interview a couple of people, see if you can find maybe some spy agents that kind of go in there and pretend to be like,
There was one, but unfortunately,
really?
yes, she only caught the first half. She was spotted.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
She was spotted.
Yeah, and
they kicked her out.
There was an intermission halfway through it, and the organisers saw her come and talk to me and
Oh,
I,
gave away the secret.
yes, but I actually hadn't met her before, and I didn't know that she was involved. But she'd heard that there was some discussion inside about how that they were going to try and prevent me from filming outside by mobbing me,
Right.
and she realized that the potential for me to be assaulted was significant because that was what they were talking about doing to me. So she, during the intermission, came out and warned me that that was their intention.
Wow.
And
And so that she was not allowed to go back in.
just because they saw her talk to me, yes.
Wow.
And so that was that. But I've got another story to tell about Graham Linehan, and that is that last year the Posey Parker footage made me, when it went viral, it made me pretty infamous, and it was I didn't really know how to deal with it all. And as I said to you earlier, with media interview requests from some seriously major news organizations, I turned all of that down. But what was really quite wonderful was a bunch of people reached out to me to sort of offer support and to give me advice and things like that, like our mutual friend, the wonderful Chris Coveries in Sydney. Graham Linehan was one of those people too, and I've been able to call upon him from time to time over the last 12 months, and what's happening to me is nothing like what's happened to him. I'm just a small fish in the greater scheme of things, but I've found his advice to be extremely useful. So and I've appreciated it, and I feel that I owe him a favor, and I want to ensure that when he's here that I cover things fairly and that I represent his point of view, and that he gets a fair shake.
Yeah, I really love the way you approach the filming you do and how you do it, and your ability to apply fairness and that ethical thinking in how you film. It's a beautiful example of mature citizen journalism. It's not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry with a camera just trying to create an alternate narrative, but that narrative is also biased and aggressive at the same time, what you see from the left. We all love the trans community. I love the trans community. I have a lot of gay friends, activists, and we talk about this issue all the time. What is not okay is attacking and creating this sort of underground mob network that goes after women. That's not cool. That is absolutely not okay. It's the same thing, it's just like, imagine if I did that as a male, I would be crucified.
You would.
Would. But if I did that, if I decided tomorrow morning, if I woke up and I hated women and I'm going to go become a trans person, call myself Sheila.
Yes, you'll get away with it. Right.
I get away with it.
You would. Absolutely, you would.
It's, that's not cool.
And I agree with you, and that's where I draw the line. I think, like for most of us, we just want to let people live and let live. It's when they start hitting people that things are going wrong, and it's the natural result of cancel culture.
And that's the thing about satire, is when you see something that's kind of gone wrong and something where you have a really great idea for a satire news story, you know that something's going wrong. And I think one of my favorite one was about Shanil Lal. And he had a poster during the Palestine protests, which was closer to the Christmas time. And the poster said that Jesus was from Palestine. Right. So my satire story was him sitting on the bench holding a bowl of falafel
Oh no.
and declaring that Jesus was from Palestine because falafel is a dish from that region. So it's
that's funny.
That's
really funny.
But that's the thing. It's like satire actually exposes that something is not true. Something is off here. That's the power of satire. And then you use that to write these fake news stories that people get to see. It's like but the problem is that these young people that follow them, that actually enable their mob behavior, people, they believe in that shit.
They absolutely do. They're
You know,
convinced.
They're convinced. They're like, oh yeah, Jesus was from Palestine.
That's right. And
like,
yes,
you're in university. Go to your research center. These universities cost millions of dollars to build. There's a research center. Why don't you just go do a bit of research? You know, not listen to some guy with a poster or holding a bowl of falafel.
exactly right. And that's our education systems no longer teach critical thinking and reasoning and logic. Instead, what it is it's indoctrination from throughout education, where we get these young people, and this is particularly apparent amongst the rainbow community, and Chanel's supporters would certainly be included amongst them, where they are absolutely convinced of the truth of these things, and they don't ever bother to stop and actually think about it and listen. And an aspect of it is, Gramscian approach to the dissemination of Marxist thought. People know Gramsci for the quote, "The long march through the institutions," and it's very true. Where our education system has been utterly captured by extreme left-wing ideology, and it doesn't seem to matter if it's climate change, if it's sexuality and gender issues, if it's minority issues. They're all being used to funnel people's thinking towards a left-wing perspective, and that's happening at primary school, secondary school, and into the tertiary education system. And people like Chanel Lau prey upon it. You know, how is it the case? And in New Zealand, as in pretty much everywhere else in the world, the cream tends to rise to the top, and the voices you hear are people who are prominent for a reason, because they're smart, they've thought about the issues, they've performed the public service, those sorts of things. Whereas in New Zealand, it's not like that, where the most prominent voices are some of the most contemptible people. And I personally include Chanel Lau in that. Like, how is it that a person like that is afforded such a platform? How can he be a leading participant in a mob that assaulted women in Albert Park and then be celebrated by our country 4 days later as Young New Zealander of the Year? It's just clown world level ridiculousness.
Yeah. That's why I wrote a satire piece.
About falafel.
No, about him winning the award.
Oh, did you? Okay, I haven't read that one.
Young Terrorist New Zealander of the Year.
Yes.
That's probably more accurate than... but again, I'm playing with this narrative of, what is a terrorist?
Well, there's that too. And I made that comment to Damien Grant, who's a wonderful journalist. Damien Grant, I commented on one of his threads that, that one person's terrorist is another person's Nobel Peace Laureate.
Yeah.
And, you look down the list of people who've been awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, there are some people who've done some fairly heinous things.
Which is one of my first early satire pieces that I wrote that kind of got me into that 20K, 30K impressions, and Annie O'Brien retweeted it, was Hamas wins the Nobel Peace Prize for the attacks on October the 7th. And they were also credited for using pipes to create bombs in the physics category.
Got the Nobel double in peace and physics. Yeah. Oh, that's genius.
And a close second was Netanyahu.
Right.
For attacking the civilians, but that didn't really, Hamas had to come first. Yes. But that's how they're celebrated.
They really are.
That's how they have captured the world. And, that was their primary focus, is to attack. So they create an overreaction. And that's sort of what I commend you with, is this whole trans attitude and strategy is we're going to go and attack you and assault you and provoke you, so you attack us. And then we create this whole, like,
A narrative around it. Look how
narrative
we're
around it
yes.
and cause an effect, and we want it to be a news, and we're going to infiltrate thousands and thousands of fire hosing of data. It's fire hosing of data, right? Create a narrative, create a story, and then push it through hundreds and thousands of data, and then that suppresses you and then uplifts them.
Yes,
That's a very simple media 101
it really is.
tactic,
It
right?
really is.
And so that's what I commend you with, not overreacting when someone's, making disgusting comments at you. That's, and that's where that was what Hamas was trying to do. And they got that. They got the overreaction
Yes.
from Israel, which then crosses the boundary around what you can and can't do with human rights, right? And then that is then seen in the world where there is Palestinian supporters. They say, well, yep, Hamas did do something that's not okay, but they've done something that's bigger. So we're going to rally against that. And
It's
that-
astonishing, isn't it? It's
and-
media warfare.
yeah, it is. And they succeeded in that. And the best thing, Elon Musk said this, the best thing that Israel could have done is to not overreact.
Yes.
That's the best thing they could have done. And that's the act of passive resistance. That's what Parihaka taught Mahatma Gandhi to do, to fight the Brits and leave the country that he wanted to, make independent from the British's ruling. He achieved that. People in New Zealand learn about Parihaka in India, right? And then you have Te Pāti Māori, and the co-leader of Te Pāti Māori, who is from Taranaki, behaves in totally radical left and organizing these protests and wanting to do this violent acts against the government. And she should be reminded, maybe you should go spend a weekend at Parihaka.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's when she did the protest during the first week of Parliament, when how she organized this whole protest.
Yes.
If you remember that. And that was one of my satire piece that I wrote about how she organized this attack, like the capital rights in the States. And the story goes with this angle of she organized thousands of people to get into the beehive, the parliament, attack the whole thing, and there are a few people dead, and everybody is running away in the bunker and hiding, and all these protesters are taken over the seats in the parliament, and Debbie is arrested, right? So what I was trying to do there is media takes a very soft approach to the oppressed view and how they speak of violent things that they want to do, just in the trans people, versus to the oppressors using violence behavior, right? So that's sort of very interesting in terms of how when you kind of compare those two things.
It is. It is very.
So for me, it was like, what I'm going to do? I'm just going to write an article about how a media would report these guys doing something that is violent, Te Pāti Māori doing something that's violent, I think that was like 20,000, 30,000 impressions,
I'm sure.
which is super interesting. But thanks for coming to the show, man.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's,
really
it's a
enjoyed
wonderful
it.
opportunity
The power
to
of
catch up.
video, the power of independent media, its power of breaking through the narratives that media capture, and just how it's so impactful to leading us to this point where we have such a better view of what happened during the March last year protests. Was not peaceful, was aggressive, and made us aware as New Zealanders the behavior that's going on in the trans community, and that's not okay behavior, and that has to be addressed. And the independent review with the New Zealand police has to bring some changes in operations and protecting women, removing gender confusion, and with children, removing that conversations in the classrooms. Yeah, thank you for doing the work you do.
Well, thank you for the work you do. I think it's really wonderful that people like us can, follow an interest and, to share perspectives and to have conversations and exchange ideas and share that with a broader audience. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure I'll have you back.
I'm looking forward to it already.
That's awesome. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.